So just yesterday, Sarah became unlockable, bringing with her some new Constellar cards, and so today I wanted to talk about all the Constellar cards that we currently have in the game. Are they going to be good? Is there some combos you can do with them? What are we missing? I want to talk about that today. It should be a lot of fun, so enjoy. So here's how I want to do the video. I want to divvy it up between what we have in game, our monsters, our spells and traps. I also want to focus on some cards that are in the TCG that are more commonly used in the Constellar sort of archetype, and some staples that they have in the TCG that we don't have that could hurt the consistency, but it could also outline some future potential. But starting off with what we have, here are the monsters. Starting off, we have 3 level 5 monsters that are, and I'm going to butcher this, Zubanesh Shamali. Zubanesh Shamali would be my best guess. When this card is normal or special summon, you can add 1 Constellar monster from your deck to your hand. So that's a really good pull from the deck. It is a 5-star, as I mentioned, so it's kind of hard to normal summon, but there is a way of special summoning these monsters, which is quite nice. Next we have Antares. When this card is normal or special summon, you can target a Constellar monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Now, cards that can do that aren't terrible in Duel Links, but they're not that great. There might be some cards that we only have as one-ofs, so they're sort of hard limited to 1 that you might want to get back, just because they are hard limited to 1. And lastly is Virgo. When this card is normal summon, you can special summon 1 level 5 Constellar monster from your hand in face-up defense position. So it's not terrible, but this doesn't have the normal or special summon. You have to normal summon this, and it is a 5-star. So although its effect is probably one of the best out of these 3, because you have to normal summon it, it makes it a little bit more difficult. Next we have Constellar Algaidi. That's my best guess on that one. When this card is normal summon, you can special summon a level 4 Constellar monster from your hand. Now that's a really good effect. It's a level 4, it's a normal summon, and it can special summon another level 4 Constellar monster from your hand. The only bad thing about this really is that level 4 Algaidi is the only level 4 that we have currently in the game. All the other ones are level 5 or the level 3. So we really need more level 4s. It can special summon itself, but that's it. It'd be nice if we had some more level 4s to make plays with, but unfortunately right now we do not. Next up we have Sheratan, and when I was searching for cards in the game, Sheratan doesn't actually come up when you go and search it in sort of the main menu, but it's there. It's a level up reward for Sarah. Sheratan, when this card is normal summon, you can add a Constellar monster from your deck to your hand. So that's another sort of searcher on summon. Maybe you wouldn't want to run this because you got to normal summon it, can't be special summoned, and it's only got that 700 attack, so you really wouldn't want to normal summon this in attack mode. 700 attack, it's not very good. You'd probably want to use your Zubanesh Shamali more, even though it's a 5-star, just because it can be normal or special, and when you normal it in attack, because you can't, set and get the effect off or anything, you got to put it in attack, and it's just too weak. Next up we have Aldebaran. When this card is normal summon, you can special summon 1 level 3 Constellar monster from your hand. Again, that's quite a good effect. It's a normal and then an extra special summon. This wouldn't get its effect off as a level 3, but you could do it anyway, just for some defense. And if you special summon itself, it doesn't get its own effect off, because it's only on a normal summon. So you can't get too crazy with it, but there are a lot of plays with this archetype I'm noticing that are flood the board really quickly. It does have some potential in that. Next up we have Russell Haug, or Hog. You contribute this card, special summon 1 Constellar monster from your hand or graveyard in face-up defense position, except Constellar Russell Haug. So this card is quite good. This is how you can get out your level 5s. You can special summon those level 5s that got effect on special summon. The only downside is it gets put in defense, so it's a good card. It's a way of getting out those level 5s, as I mentioned, but in defense though, you can't really use them offensively, so it's just like, what is this archetype trying to do? You probably guessed it by now, it's for mainly Xyz summoning. You know, you get out your 2 level 3s quite easily for a level 3, 2 level 4s easily for level 4, level 5s for level 5. But we don't have Xyz. But considering that Xyz is sort of on the horizon, you know, it's not going to be coming next week or anything, but it's on the horizon. I feel like these Constellas have some future potential for absolute certain, especially with some of the Xyz monsters they have. So we'll move on to Spell and Traps. So for the Spell and Trap lineup, we have Constella Cradle. Target 2 Constella monsters in your graveyard, add those targets to your hand. You can't conduct your battle phase to turn you activate this card. Really, I don't think this will see play. There are some monsters that can get back a monster from your graveyard that don't make you skip your battle phase. Just a little bit too slow, and there are better options in the archetype for doing what it does. Constella Belt, the activation of light monsters effects cannot be negated. Not worth running. Most times, if you decided to run this to try and protect your effects, most of the time would just be a dead card. That's quite obviously a bad card. And then we have Constella Meteor. During this turn, this card is activated. If an opponent's monster battles a Constella monster, and the opponent's monster is not destroyed, shuffle into the deck at the end of the damage step. So this has some use, probably not a 3 of, but it does have some use to try and bounce problematic monsters. It would kind of be unfortunate to take that battle damage, but maybe you run Holy Guard. We see that Magnets now have some more viability because of their field spell, which can bounce the Cocytus back to hand. So I feel like while Cocytus is in the meta, this will be a consideration for whoever wants to run the Constella decks. You need a way of bouncing those problematic monsters that you can't get over. So in Constellas, probably needs to be included, but not that great of a card, considering you have to set it, already have it on the field, and have it active on your next turn to do that. So overall, it's not fantastic. Probably, as I mentioned, you probably want to run some Constella Meteor, maybe as a 2 if you're running this deck, but the spells are pretty lackluster. So how exactly are we supposed to use these monsters? Well, there is the new monster card. I don't have it pulled up here. There's the Guardian of Order. If you control 2 or more light monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. So that's just a way of using these monsters, but again, it's not fantastic. Because we don't have Xyz, and this is pretty much just an Xyz archetype, there's not too much you can do. You know, you can get board presence very quickly. If you run some back row destruction with this, there's an option. And if you want some back row protection for yourself as well, you'll need a lot of cards to support this. But if you run the, as I say, the protection and the back row destruction, because there's nothing inherent in the archetype, and just rely on beating over monsters, that's probably what you want to do. Anything that's too big to beat over, you probably run the Meteor to try and remove it. But it can flood the board very quickly. And you can also run Guardian of Order, as I mentioned. Now I want to move on to what the TCG has. So we'll start off with the Pollux. During your turn, this card was normal summoned. You can normal summon 1 Constella monster in addition to your normal summon set. You'll notice that that's something quite similar to what we already have, the Ritual Beast Elder, getting you that extra normal summon. For them, it enables their sort of contact fusions. It can be good for Guardian of Order, just getting some board presence. Now that I'm looking at a little bit more about the flooding board potential, you could also run Share the Pain, considering how easily that these Constellas get out monsters. You normal summon, you get that extra normal summon through various cards, you Share the Pain, you tribute off the one you don't want, you force them to get rid of their, for example, Neos, their Cocytus, their big monster. Next up we have Constella Chaos. Cannot be used as single material up to twice per turn. You can target 1 Constella monster on the field, then activate one of these effects. Increase its level by 1, reduce its level by 1. So you can manipulate 2 monsters on the field to have the right level you want, which again is an Xyz thing. We don't have Xyz monsters, but you can tell that once we get them, this will be a really good card to just go into whatever level that you so need at the time. So these 2 Constella Xyz are the ones I found were most used in the TCG. in particular, these two weren't just used in Constellar decks. They were just sort of generic Xyz monsters that fit into a lot of decks and were used in a lot of topping decks. So first up, probably the best one is Pallades. Once per turn, during either player's turn, you can attach an Xyz material from this card, then target one card on the field, return that to the hand. Now obviously you can bounce your opponent's cards, but there was some other combos that they run with bouncing their own cards back to their hand to get multiple activations out of the same card. And if it was a very crippling card for both players, you could just activate it to cripple your opponent and then bounce it so that you're not restricted on your turn. So it was a pretty versatile card. 2 level 5 light monsters, pretty easy to achieve with Constellars, and this was used in a lot of topping decks. So when we get Xyz, if we get this, that'll be good. We probably won't because it's pretty strong, and it's during either player's turn once per turn, so it's kind of really strong. The other one which wasn't used as much was the Stellar Knight Constellar Diamond. I know that's kind of hard to read. So this card requires 3 or more level 5 light monsters. During your main phase 2, you can Xyz summon this card using a Stellar Knight Xyz monster you control as Xyz material, except Stellar Knight Constellar Diamond. When this card has Xyz material, either player can send cards from their deck to the graveyard, and any card that returns from the graveyard to the hand is banished instead. During either player's turn, when an opponent's dark monster activates its effect, you can attach an Xyz material from this card, negate that activation, and if you do, destroy it. So again, it's another generic one. It's just 3 level 5 light monsters. You don't need any Constellars. You can tell that there's mentioning some Stellar Knight cards, which I'm about to get into. It's just a all-round good Xyz monster. It can negate things, it can banish and stop graveyard recursion. So it was also used. I don't think it's a little bit too specific to be run in Duel Links if we ever did get it, but it definitely was used in the TCG, so that's why I kind of wanted to bring that up. So I mentioned that a lot of decks didn't run the Constellars in the main deck and just used those Xyz cards as generic materials, as generic options I should say. And those decks that did just use it as a generic option were actually running the Satellar Knights. Now these aren't directly related and they don't really interact with Constellar Knights anyway, but you can clearly see by the artwork that they were sort of a companion archetype to them. And in many decks in the TCG that had those Xyz materials in the side deck, they were using Satellar Knights to get them out. So I kind of wanted to talk about Satellar Knights in this video as well. We'll start off with Satellar Knight Altair. When this card is summoned, you can target one Tellar Knight monster in your graveyard except Satellar Knight Altair, special summon that monster in defense position. Also, monsters you control cannot attack for the rest of this turn, except Tellar Knight monsters. You can only use this effect of Satellar Knight Altair once per turn. So again, it's fitting in with that sort of Xyz summoning, getting out monsters very fast. Satellar Knight Deneb. When this card is summoned, you can add one Tellar Knight monster from your deck to your hand, except Satellar Knight Deneb. You can only use this effect of Satellar Knight Deneb once per turn. So that's your sort of on summon, search the deck. It's very similar to Constellar Knights and some of the cards that they have access to. So you've got your special summon from the graveyard, your search from the deck. Next we have Vega. When this card is summoned, you can special summon one Tellar Knight monster from your hand, except Satellar Knight Vega. You can only use this effect of Satellar Knight Vega once per turn, so that's a special summon from the hand. You can see how these sort of flood in the very same way that Constellar Knights do, or Constellar cards do, because they're not actually Constellar Knights, or they would fit in with this Tellar Knight. Now we have Uruk-hai. That's all I'm going to say about that one. If this card is summoned, you can send one Tellar Knight card from your deck to the graveyard, except Satellar Knight Unuk. I'm going to call it Unuk. You can only use the effect of Satellar Knight Unuk once per turn. So that's the graveyard setup that you can sort of have access to immediately combo off with the Altair if you happen to have it, but it's sort of a foolish burial card, you know, in a monster form. A bit more situational than the other three, because obviously it still did get used as a 2 or 3 of in these TCG decks. So overall, are the Constellars good right now? I think it's a kind of an obvious answer. They're not really good. They do have a lot of future potential though, and obviously because they're meant to be an Xyz archetype, and that's sort of their whole goal. Once we do get them, they might be put back on the map. But right now, their swarming doesn't have much of a payoff other than, say, Guardian of the Order. So if you want to run it, you probably can. You just need to run a very tight package and give yourself enough room in your deck to run enough back row destruction and back row protection for yourself, like the Wall of D's, for example. Maybe probably not Drowning, probably like Millwall, Wall of D, that kind of cards. And you can swarm the board quite easily. You run the Guardian of the Order, which I'm not too sure about how Guardian of the Order can be used. If you control 2 or more light monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. So it's less good because we don't have like a main phase 2, for example, but if you have these smaller monsters that you'd more happily cash in for Guardian of the Order, that's obviously an option, and get out a big sort of quote-unquote boss monster. It doesn't have any protection for itself or destruction for opponent's cards, but it's just a big body basically that you can get out. So yeah, Constella is a little bit underwhelming, but I hope you enjoyed the video and the presentation, and I hope you get excited for Constellas in the future, because I'm excited for them, especially with some of those Xyz monsters. I hope you enjoyed the video. Peace.